I mean, Expedia had a good first quarter compared to, obviously, last year's first quarter. So
I think the whole industry had a good first quarter of 2022 compared to 2021 when we were in the midst of it. But
yeah, very, very, very true. But things are looking a little better compared to 19, which is good news as well.
it's because everyone wants to travel.
Because the whole world wants to travel.
That's right.
So, okay, and then of course the whole world wants to travel, yet we have a war in the East, Europe, we have, recession fears, and we still have COVID. I mean, which is a word, I think I'm the first person who's mentioned it since all day, but these things are still happening. Yeah. So how, do we see headwinds? I mean, honestly, when we look ahead, Forward Keys had data that said, well, we're looking ahead and we're not really seeing a shift in this demand. But really, how long, let's be real, how long can this demand go on?
Well, so I guess I will repeat what it sounds like others said, which is we aren't seeing it in the numbers right now. I mean, I think there's been a lot of discussion today about actually the challenges are operationally, how do we have the capacity in airports and elsewhere to sustain the demand? I mean, it's going to be a big hot summer in terms of demand. So we're not seeing it tail off. The reality, though, is you look at inflation, you look at gas prices, you look at sort of the question of what's going to happen with consumer spending. And I guess I just believe that people have a deep need to travel. I think we've seen that when people couldn't travel in the pandemic, they've come back in force. So even if there are headwinds of inflation and the like, I think people will find ways to travel.
And is that going to continue? Because if we all want to travel, we all took that trip in the summer or early fall, it's going to continue on to next year?
I mean, as I said, we aren't seeing anything in our trends that would tell us it isn't. But you can't put your head in the sand and not read the newspaper about what's happening in inflation and wars and the like. But as I said, I think that people will want to travel. I think it's a big tailwind that the U.S. has removed the testing requirement, because I think that had suppressed. Pardon?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That's it. I think some Americans didn't want to travel abroad because of the fear of not being able to come back. So I think that there are also some nice tailwinds.
That made a big change. But the whole labor thing, the whole the shortage of workers, the fact that we have the supply issue, and the kind of the bad press that's now followed. And I don't know. I guess it's here too. It's everywhere. But it's always like the top headline. Pictures of long lines at the airport, and I'm just wondering at the point where it's going to turn some people off. It's just bad PR for the industry.
Well, so I live in London, and there's been particularly bad press in the last sort of month about issues at Heathrow and other airports across the UK. I've talked to people who have said, well, I was going to go on this international trip, and instead I'm going to make it a domestic trip. As I said, we don't see it in the numbers yet, but I have friends who are coming over from the US, and they said, Ariane, what's happening with airports? Look, it is a fact that there is staffing shortages. I think that the steps that some airports and airlines are taking to make a more predictable experience. I mean, it's painful to have to cancel flights, but if it means that you're not going to have travelers that are missing their flights because they can't get into the airport, I think that it's a painful step, but maybe the one to take. What we've seen is when a hotel knows that there are staffing shortages and therefore they decide we're only going to do cleaning once every 3 days, if they signpost that to travelers before they arrive, travelers are actually fine with it. So I think there's also something about predictability.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that they clean our towels and clean our room every day at a hotel. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, well,
changed my expectations completely. So what do you think, do you see this being resolved sooner rather than later, the labor
staffing
issue?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. There are so many different factors. There was COVID, there was immigration. I was talking to as I said, I live in London. I was having dinner at a local restaurant on Saturday night, and the owner told me his biggest problem is finding staff. And he said, everybody who used to work here before COVID, before Brexit, moved back to the continent, and I can't staff people. So I think in the end, you'll get equilibrium in the labor market, but I think we were hit with people leaving our industry during COVID, and then changes in immigration trends. But over time, it will balance itself out. I think you must have seen, was it yesterday that Germany announced that they were going to approve some visas for people to come over from Turkey to work in the airports. And I think countries need to be creative in looking at solutions.
Right. And what about tech solutions too?
Oh, of course, tech. I mean, sort of to me, it goes without saying, which is everyone is looking at what can we do in self-service, what can we do in contactless, what can we do to reduce the need for too much sort of human work that is not helping a traveler's experience. One of the things we've been doing is obviously we have a big air business, and looking with each of our airline partners at what is driving calls between us and the airline, or when a traveler calls an airline and then wants to come back to us. And it might be different within each airline, but given that, and I'm sure many of you in this room or watching this on a live stream know, getting people in the call center isn't the easiest thing right now either. And so anything that we can do in order to, A, automate things that travelers can do on their own before calling any of us, and then B, understanding the root causes for the calls and trying to fix them is going to be great for everyone, great for the traveler, and also...
you had to learn that, though, after the last couple of years. Are you seeing now more pressure on your call center again because of the disruptions?
Not at all in the way that we had at the height of COVID, and we've invested a lot in virtual agent technology, and now we see that 40% of traveler queries are solved that way. We've done a lot of work on air credits and allowing travelers to get their air credits in the shopping path rather than having to redeem them in a different way. Okay. So a lot of focus there, as I know it is for a lot of people in the industry.
Right. So during the pandemic, Expedia has not been just sitting around and twiddling thumbs and waiting for things to get better. You guys were really busy.
Yes.
And it looks like you took it seriously. I know there was some criticism. Expedia hasn't been innovative, but certainly you've made some announcements recently that showed no, we really are coming up with some new ideas, some new products, and kind of a different way of thinking. In some of the ways to look at it would be more of a longer term way of thinking, right? Thinking about the customer retention. There's so much, especially when you're a public company and needing to turn in those numbers every quarter. But for travel, really for an OTA, especially where it can be quite a challenge, you're always going to still want to get that customer loyalty somehow and to build that relationship with the customer. It's kind of hard to do because we jump around when we travel. What have you done to kind of try to build retention and build that that lifetime value of the customer?
Yep. So yes, we were busy, like many people over the last couple of years. If you think about the traveler experience, I would say there's really two things. One is just how do you make it so if a traveler comes to one of our brands, whether it's Expedia or Hotels.com or Vrbo, that they have a great experience. So that can be introducing new capabilities like our trip boards, which allows people to collaboratively plan a trip together. That can be through new smart shopping that we've launched, which allows travelers, as they're comparing hotels, to understand comparing rooms in hotels, what's in it. It can be signposting more information to travelers when they're in shopping. So there's a whole host of things that we're doing for travelers so that they have confidence and trust while they're shopping and then in trip. And then the second piece is, so that's each brand is strong. Then it's how do you actually create value across our brands? So we announced a program called One Key, which is the loyalty program that will cut across our brands. And what it really means is that when a traveler is, say, booking a vacation rental on Vrbo, they're going to earn points that they can then use to take a flight through Expedia. Or if they're booking a car in Expedia, they can use the points then on Hotels.com. So it's really, when you think about long-term traveler loyalty, it's do they have a great experience? Then is there a reason to come back? And we think that that sort of house of brands concept, it really resonates with travelers.
So on the point of loyalty, because I would ask you what took so long for Expedia to do that, right? It's a no-brainer. But was there originally a thinking that we wanted the brands to compete with each other, that they each had their own, or Hotels.com had its own loyalty program, Expedia had its own loyalty program. I'm not sure about Orbitz, Travelocity, some of the other brands.
Yes.
Like you said, it makes so much sense to bring it all together, with Vrbo as well. So was that a different way of thinking, or was that just because now all the brands are on the same platform? What brought that about?
I would say that was some of the thinking that we did in COVID was to say, as a company, we were operating as very separate brands and very separate divisions with some things that were shared, right? Hotel supply was shared, but the teams were working very independently. And what we realized is, one, if we could build the technology in a way that could power our brands and our partners, that would be really powerful. Mm-hmm. But also that for travelers, this idea of having a house of brands would be quite powerful. So I think it was, I remember I joined Expedia in 2013, and at the time it was very much, each brand doing its own thing, moving as quickly as possible. And we still are trying to move as quickly as possible, but we think that there's power in being all together.
Okay. So the other thing is, what was Ian, I guess, is now kind of grown into something else. And this is this private label, this white label business that I have no idea how big it is. Were you going to tell me how big it is?
Well, so we actually break out the B2B part of the business now in our reporting, but it is a large business. So basically what we've done is we had the Expedia affiliate network, which I think in the room there are some Ian alums. It was nice to see during the day-to-day. And then we put it that was a hotel-only private label business. We brought it together with our multi-line of business, B2B business, and that created Expedia Partner Solutions. And what we did last summer is we took that business where we were powering other partners, and we put it with our teams that were managing the relationships with hotels and airlines and cruise companies and car rental companies, basically everyone who was powering our platforms. So it was sort of the supply side of B2B and the demand side of B2B. We brought those teams together to create Expedia for Business. The thinking being, one, we can deliver a lot more value to our partners, whether it's you distribute through us, we power you through our technology, you can advertise with us. And instead of having to talk to 3 different people in our company to do that, you could now just have one person who could talk to you about all of their solutions. That's why it's good for partners. And then for our teams, the fact that we brought together all of the B2B teams, if you just think about for people for career progression, for development, it's sort of simple things of, wait a minute, what is the role of an account manager? If you have a lot of different roles of account manager across the company and you can actually see that, career progression becomes a lot easier. So I think there's benefits for our partners and then, of course, benefits for our team.
So the private label or of having airlines or hoteliers or banks or other institutions, right? I guess anybody who wants to get into the travel business, basically, it's like a plug and play.
Yep. If you think about we're all in the travel industry. It's a massive industry, and there are so many different ways that people want to buy. A lot of people have points from their bank program, from their cards, and guess what? They want to spend that on travel. There's corporate travel. There is offline travel agents, and so we power all of them today, all different types of partners. We power them with hotel technology. We power them with our sort of front end and sort of the full stack. So if you look at, for example, United Airlines, we power their hotel path. And then we have a travel agent solution. And I would say in some ways the sky is the limit in what's possible there. And as we were re-platforming our whole company, as I sort of talked about earlier, and building our technology in a way that was multi-tenant, extensible, you can imagine having all of these services and capabilities that power our own brands that can then go power our partners. And when you think about what we've just come through in COVID, I think all of us has to think about only do what only you can do. Focus your time and energy on the things that differentiate you. And in a lot of conversations with partners, we found that they were having to rebuild technology that maybe wasn't differentiating them from others. And so as we started to talk about our vision of rebuilding our technology in a way that could power them, it's just completely resonated.
And then is Verbo's part of that as well now, right? And then you're working with Hopper, and is that going to be something where third parties can incorporate Verbo properties?
That is probably one of the biggest asks that I get from partners is when can we participate in all of your vacation rental business? So.
And what's the answer?
And that is something on our roadmap.
Okay. Okay. And when will Verbo be integrated into the Expedia platform?
I don't have a timing, but right now some vacation rental supply is on brand Expedia, but that's part of the replatforming that we're working on.
Okay. Okay. So we ran out of time, but I do have one question for you that I'm throwing you a big surprise here. No, and this is a question we used to ask all our speakers. What keeps you up at 3 a.m. besides your dog or cat or?
Well, I sleep pretty well, so I don't know if it gets me up at 3 a.m., although right now it's very hot in London. I think the thing that professionally I think the most about is, do I have the right team and is the team, are they working on the right problems, and do they have what they need in order to be successful? I think for all of us, the bigger the team that you manage, the more it's really about making sure that your team feels empowered and they have what they need to be successful. So I think that's probably the thing that doesn't keep me up at night, but that I try to spend time thinking about. And it's hard, the bigger your team, to really know, does everyone feel empowered? And yes, you have pulse surveys and you can do skip levels and the like, but I think that's probably the toughest thing for any leader.
It's all about your people.
It is.
Absolutely. Ariane, Gorin, thank you very much.
Thank you.